Welcome back. He had a love of music, but when he tasted heroin, he just couldn't stop. Now, this young man from Westchester is gone, but his father, he is keeping his music alive. Reporter Ken Buffa has his story.
In Yorktown Heights, down the mailbox pin road of Central Street, there is a home that once radiated with music.
Oh yeah, we had music. He was always playing music.
The music came from Justin Veach, an athlete, a skateboarder, and passionate musician and son of Jeffrey Veach.
He was an amazing person, and he was the picture of health.
In the basement, the 17-year-old would spend hours pouring his soul into his instruments.
He would come running down the steps and began to work.
Recording music, producing songs, his father says he showed great promise.
I put emphasis on your name.
That is, until Justin began experimenting with drugs like marijuana and eventually heroin.
And he wasn't an addict, but he experimented with drugs very actively.
And Justin's father says the more time Justin spent experimenting with drugs, the less time he spent here in his home studio.
We had him seek, professional help.
After returning from rehabilitation in 2008, Justin was getting ready to start his senior year at Yorktown High School. But when the alarm rang that morning without stopping, Justin's parents knew something was wrong.
He would never wake up one Monday morning and die of a heroin overdose. He had sniffed heroin that night after doing his homework.
Mourning with the loss of a son, Justin's father vowed to continue to keep Justin's tune alive. Using the web, he composed his ideas.
Instead of running away from the issue, we wanted to confront it.
He produced a CD of his son's music, which he sold to raise money to create the Justin Veach Fund.
That following June, we awarded our first scholarship to one of Justin's classmates for $1,000.
Then Veach, like his son, used his voice to resonate in listeners.
Our son, who we thought would someday fill a stadium with fans, had died.
Today, Veach has reached more than 12,000 students around Westchester, Long Island, and New Jersey schools, and even further.
We got a message from a member of a band in England, saying that one of our friends had the entire lyrics to one of Justin's songs tattooed on his rib cage. And I can't stay away because you're a radio wave and you always seem to be transmitting to my brain.
Veach says through his talks, Justin's music will always live on.
The unspeakable pain that follows the loss of anyone to drugs forever changes the families and the communities in which they lived. Now, Reverend Vincent Ruding of the Church of the Assumption in Peekskill, he presided over 3 funerals of 3 young men who died just days apart from each other, all from heroin. He spoke out to me in a one-on-one interview about the harrowing experience and the way that he's witnessed heroin creep into the lives of those in his congregation and his neighborhood.
It's a shock. It's a shock, and yet it's the reality. It is so common for youth in Westchester County in particular and all around to use heroin. And it used to be a drug that was for people who were extreme in drug addiction. Not anymore. It's become a drug of choice among the youth, and it's an epidemic, and it's a huge problem. We have to address it and be honest about it.
Put a face, if you could, Father, on what ages you're talking about that you see.
Younger teenage till mid-20s. I understand from the research is that's basically 18 to 29 is the fastest growing group of people using heroin, but certainly it can start earlier as well. And it starts with, usually people start smoking pot, then they graduate to pills. And the pills, the painkillers, which they get from prescriptions when people are getting oxycodone and other pills that their parents have, and they'll steal them and they'll start popping pills. And it's very common among the youth. It's very accessible. But the pills became more expensive, and heroin was so cheap that the kids that couldn't afford the pills would start using heroin because it was readily available, and it became so common. And the problem is with heroin, you can use it 3 times and you'll never get off unless you have an extremely strong will and you go through a radical recovery program, and you're going to suffer a lot. And it could be lethal, 1 shot, and you could be dead because often it's mixed with poison. And unfortunately, this is the result of what we've seen recently in our own community.
In reading this story, it was chilling, where literally you were getting ready to officiate a funeral for a young life when all of a sudden one of your parishioners, I think, said, Father, we got another one. Give an idea of those 3 lives in such a short period of time is kind of emblematic about how fast moving this is and how unprepared everyone is for just the scope of what we're talking about.
Absolutely. It was literally at the wake service of one young man, and I want to emphasize, all 3 were good kids. All 3, you watch at the wake, the pictures of them growing up, and hear the stories of their friends. They're good kids. Some played sports in high school. Normal, we would say, suburban middle-class kids. And they didn't want this. All of them were trying to get out of it. And this is how pernicious, how wicked this addiction is. The greatest pain I think anybody can experience is the loss of a child. And so from a human perspective, every mother and father, my prayers, my heart goes to them because it's brutal. I know about it from my own experience growing up, but having walked with them through the death of their children, it has cataclysmic consequences in their own life. The problem is they could speak as much as they want from the heart. They could speak as much as they want with reason. When one has a heroin addiction, it's as if they cannot even hear what's being spoken to them. It has taken over them. And so their only hope is that they can wrestle and fight and love their children into a program where they will finally have born inside of them the desire to stop. Because they not only suffer that their child is addicted, but they don't know at what moment. He might be doing good, she might be doing good for 6 months. They hang around the wrong friend, they go to the wrong party, and a moment they get some kind of little temptation, just one more time, and they could be dead. And so the fear that parents live with, in addition to the suffering of going through the addiction, but the fear that they could lose their child, is a daily reality for them, and it's a huge cross to bear.
Do people understand just how bad this has gotten, or do you think that there is still a lot of denial going on, not in our area, not in Westchester, et cetera?
I think, at least in our recent experience, people are starting to wake up because they're seeing good kids dying. And I think that's woken them up. I know there's been some community boards that have met, and they've had public forums now on this subject. And I think it has to start in high school. You got to start with the youth, and there has to be, we need to take a whole new approach to youth ministry. And I make an appeal to parents this evening, please come back to God. And so, once a person's already down the road, that's going to be a huge effort to get them out. But it'd be so much greater to make a preventative effort and to say there's a healthier way to live. I wish that the youth would say, okay, yeah, you only live once. You know what? I'm going to say, I'm going to live my life, and I'm going to make the best I can out of my life. I'm going to spend my life living in service and love of others. And if I have a friend who's caught, I'm going to fight tooth and nail to save that kid.
We'll be right back, everyone, with more. Please stay with us.